again, I appreciate you sticking around. Hopefully, I looked at the agenda. I noticed Cummins was right before me, so I tried not to duplicate what I thought they may present, and I think we'll see a couple of similar slides, but I think there'll be enough, hopefully, quality information for everybody in the group. Appreciate Young Volvo and Craig for inviting me today. They've been a tremendous partner for us. As you saw a vehicle out here earlier, they're doing the pre-delivery and some of the maintenance for us, so really appreciate their efforts in helping us expand our program overall. So as you look at this next slide, if we can get this to work, again, this is not a ad campaign. I'm definitely not on the marketing side, but there's a couple things that I wanted to point out on this particular slide for you. As you kind of look down the left, your left side, my right, you'll see Doritos, Cheetos, Ruffles, Tostitos. Again, not an ad campaign, but we have the innate advantage. A lot of our product is extremely light. So we're able to take advantage of alternative fuels ahead of a lot of other companies based off the product we haul. Again, so when Cummins was up here talking about the 8.9 liter or 9 liter as most people call it, or the 12 liter, we're able to jump on board with the 9 liter based off of what you see up there. So again, not a marketing campaign, just want to kind of give the breadth of why we're able to take advantage of alternative fuels. Additionally, you will see some other products up there that are extremely heavy, that we do a lot of backhauls with our sister companies as well. So the 8.9 liter absolutely works in the fleet, and I'll show you that the 12 liter is going to be tremendous as well overall. The other thing on this particular slide that I wanted to kind of point out to everybody, it's critical to have corporate culture that embraces alternative fuels. And when I talk about corporate culture, PepsiCo's mission is performance with a purpose. You may look at that and say, hey, that's a great fancy slogan, it looks good on a slide, but really what does that mean and how does it impact the fleet? So I'll try to share that with you overall on what that means. Our corporate vision from a Frito-Lay and PepsiCo standpoint is to be a preeminent green company. When you start to look at that from a corporate perspective, what we really look at is water, land, and energy. And from a corporate perspective, we're trying to make a zero impact or a net zero impact to the environment. So really over to your left, which you'll see in kind of the chart that's exploded in the pie piece, I looked at our transportation, our fleet department. What we really look at from a tactical perspective is as you go all the way to the center of that is the fleet that we absolutely control ourselves, but we also go all the way out to our third-party carriers and our suppliers to make sure that they have the same sustainability goals as we do, and we try to align as best as possible with them. So again, this is so when we start to look at the fleet and look at alternative fuels, it's not necessarily just the fleet. The entire company is poised behind sustainability. If you look at water, natural gas, and electricity, this goes to some of the performance we have had in our plants. This goes back to about 1999 from a base perspective, but on water, 45% less usage overall, natural gas in our plants, 33%, and electricity, 25%. So this kind of gives us a very good track record of a sustainability record that we can kind of really hang our hats on and be proud of. And again, that is the baseline for the performance with a purpose, having a sustainability vision as an organization, and again, fleet is just part of that. So what we did from a fleet perspective, we kind of took the corporate vision and made it a little bit into fleet. So we look at reliability, sustainability, and capability. You may look at that and say, what is that? From a reliability perspective, we want to make sure we have a safe, reliable fleet for our associates and also the general public on the road every single day. Sustainability, we want to be the preeminent green company, as I mentioned, and the most fuel-efficient fleet in America. And capability, we really want to be the employer of choice for our technicians trade from a technician perspective. Alternatives fuels is a chance to change our technicians' view on automotive as it is starting to evolve. It gives them a fresh sense of what they're doing, and they can take pride in a career that is sustainable overall. You may ask why a snack food company is involved in so much in alternative fuels and in fleet. When you start to look at Frito-Lay as an overall fleet, yes, we are a snack food company, but we happen to also have the 7th largest fleet in the country. Today I'll focus on really the 1,100 tractors that we have in our fleet nationally, but we have over 18,000 pieces of equipment that run on the road every single day, throughout the country. So today's objective, again, I didn't want to go through number of trucks, what the engines are out there, and the differences between LNG and CNG. So really today I want to show you kind of a roadmap of what worked for us in implementing the vehicles and what I truly think works for other companies that are interested. So I'll try to walk you through some of the examples and tools that we used to understand. And the question I'd ask everybody today is, that we'll try to answer, is what is critical mass? When I talk critical mass, really what we're looking at is when the alternative fuel becomes the sole source of your fuel and or majority of what you're truly purchasing in the future. So once again, why is fuel critical within Frito-Lay? I mentioned we have the largest fleet. If you go back to really 2004, we were just kind of going year in, year out, running our fleet, not necessarily having a comprehensive fuel strategy. As you see from the slide up there, it's probably hard to see, but we were using about 46 to 47 million gallons a year from either gas or diesel. When you start to look at what that costs, I'll let you guys do the math, but 46 million gallons a year times $4 is a pretty big number. So again, when we started to align the fleet with a corporate strategy, we looked at a 3 to 5 year strategy to really get it implemented. In 2008, we really started to implement the strategy, and I'll tell you, through 2012, we're about 18% reduced. We have a company goal that you see up there to reduce our usage of traditional fossil fuels by 50% by 2020. Currently, we are on target to reach that goal. We do have line of sight to it, and it's not necessarily just a target that's out on paper. We have true line of sight to that. A couple of ways that we're doing that is really through people, process, and technology. What we first started is 2008. We usually and traditionally our smaller delivery vehicles, light-duty vehicles, were strip chassis. You may see them very similar to a bread vehicle out there that you see at your convenience stores. We switched to a cutaway. Overnight, we went from about 10 mpg to almost 18 and a half, and in some cases 20 mpg on that vehicle, doubling the fuel efficiency on our vehicle. Additionally, we can talk, Cummins will tell you this, you can talk fleets, you can talk engines, you can talk different OE technology, but the biggest impact folks can have on their vehicles is 30% of your MPG comes from your driver habits. Everybody in this room, the way you drive your personal car impacts your MPG as much as 30% to that vehicle's MPG. So again, Cummins can build the best engine out there, best alternative engine, but again, if you drive it like Mario Andretti, you're going to get Mario Andretti's fuel economy. Again, if you're down in Indianapolis, that's good. If you work for Frito-Lay or you're driving to and from work, that costs a lot of money to do so. With that, once we started training our professional drivers, we saw a 6 to 7% increase in our fuel economy from just from training our drivers how to drive fuel efficiently. In 2010, we introduced some 100% electric vehicles. 2008, we decided to take the driver fueling, the driver efficiency program to our 14,000 sales representatives that drive our vehicles every single day. As early, we did our over-the-road fleet. We saw a little bit more of a gain, and we were kind of scratching our heads why, but as I mentioned, we were training sales folks. Typically in our Class 8 vehicles, they drive very efficiently and safe as well, but we were able to get a little increase from there. However, when we trained our sales force, we did see much better fuel economy from them and much more of an improvement. 2012, and I'll get into CNG a little bit more, we really started to put the pedal in, and that's not necessarily a fuel efficient saying, but we really put the pedal down on natural gas as we moved forward. So again, as I mentioned, we do have the largest all-electric private fleet, commercial fleet in the U.S. So we do run 5 electric trucks here in Ohio, down in Columbus. I'm very excited for that. That was the second site that we happened to roll out nationally. First site was New York, and then we decided to come to Columbus, Ohio. So very proud from an electric perspective. So we have, before we got into natural gas, we had a lot of experience with alternative fuels overall. So again, why are we here today? Make sure I'm on the right slide. Again, you heard this all morning, so really not going to spend a whole lot of time on it, but internally, this is what really resonates to our employees, our technicians, and our drivers, and in some cases, our customers as well. It's domestic. It's cleaner, it's abundant, as you heard today. Again, a lot of articles we read and say you got 150 to 200 years supply right here in the States. Earlier, they were talking about exporting it. My biggest fear is if we don't start using it, we will export it. The folks that own the fuel, they're going to sell it. It's a commodity. They're going to find a place to use it. Let's use it here and build America. Again, from a cost perspective, we're very comfortable on the cost. Again, Cummins had a very similar slide. The way we look at it is about 25% of the commodity cost is what hits you at the pump. When you look at a barrel of oil, I think they mentioned today it's at $97 or so, 75 to 80% of that hits you at the pump. So when a barrel of oil goes up, that's why the pump goes up so much. Again, so folks talk, hey, as you start to use the supply and demand changes and price goes up, we're going to see pennies at the pump, which we still think that's a very viable option for us overall. So a quick roadmap, go through this fairly quickly. I know you guys want to get out of here. But really, when we started to look at how to implement it, we had 2 things we really needed to satisfy, is the business need and also people. So we wanted to look at which fuel where, what equipment was out on the market, what equipment do we currently run, and where do we run it, what fuel is out there, where is that fuel, maintenance, who's going to do our maintenance, how are we going to do our maintenance, and do we have the capability of that. And from a people standpoint, we want to make sure we have the right culture and the organization that can impact that change. Because that's one thing I'll say is you can't underestimate the change management that you go through when you start to go to an alternative fuel for your technicians and or your drivers. It is very critical that you address that up front. So I do apologize up front. I know this is really hard to see, so I'll try to walk you through it. But really up top, what you see, if you start down on the right-hand side, is we ranked all the fuels. So up top, you'll see diesel, gasoline, all the way down to LNG, biogas. And then we looked at what our current application we were running it in, whether it was small utility vehicles or over-the-road fleet. And then we looked at the availability, the source, is it renewable, the greenhouse gas effect, the return on investment, and future. And again, this is what we utilize internally to our fleet. We heard that there was a lot of fuels out there, and we wanted to make sure that we understood how all those fuels impact our fleet. Once we kind of ranked and color-coded those internally, then we looked at internally on our fleet, our route trucks, bulk trucks, and tractors, what are we currently using, what's the primary fuel source, and what do we think we can go to. So you can kind of see diesel and gasoline is where we used to be, and then CNG, LNG, propane, and electric also had a play within certain segments of our business. So when a lot of fleets start looking at me and saying, hey, your business is different, we can't run that, what I ask you to do and implore you to do is you may not be able to convert your entire business over or your entire fleet, but what segments of your business may you be able to flip over to an alternative technology? And what is that alternative technology? Is it LNG? Is it CNG? Is it electric? Because again, we talk long haul, and I'll get into that a little bit, but not everybody long hauls every single day, even if you're a long haul fleet. So what percentage could you flip over in your fleet? And that's what we really looked internally to see what worked for us. And again, maybe it will work for you. Not going to get really into the economics too in depth. Just make sure I get the right slide. But, and again, a lot of this is basic economics that you do in your daily business every single day. We really want to rank our alternative fuels side by side. So we looked at a variety of different things. So we initially it was the equipment from a general perspective, the BTU content of the particular fuels side by side. Looked at the capital cost, the fuel cost, the infrastructure costs, and wanted to rank that side by side. Understand from an internal perspective. Cummins had a great slide on what it costs, but I wanted to understand what it costs in my business with my infrastructure and our rates as well. Then we also looked at the maintenance of it as well. The PM intervals, yes, they are greater. Yes, you do have spark plugs you have to change. And the one thing I'll say about that is the new diesels, if you buy a brand new diesel today, is probably at parity with a CNG vehicle from an emission standpoint. However, if you're into fleet and you understand your operations, you're paying for that. As an organization last year, Frito-Lay spent about $1 million in maintaining all of our bolt-on emissions equipment. So what I'll tell you is, yes, you may have to change spark plugs a little bit more, but that's a lot less expensive from changing DPF, DEF, SCR, and I'll go on and on. But again, so there is some differences, there's some trade-offs, but ultimately we think from a maintenance perspective, the Cummins numbers were almost right on. We believe it's about $800 per 100,000 miles. So I think you had, just about $1,000, and in our fleet, that's what we're seeing as well. The plus is we're spending about $1,000 more on the CNG vehicle than a diesel, but that is looking at all the older vehicles that we have included. That's not looking at just the newer vehicles with all the bolt-on emissions. Once you get those emissions out of there, that cost delta is going to be much greater as well. Once you have the vehicles, the next thing is understand source. And when we looked at it, there's really three ways of how you're going to go about getting fuel. You can use a public station, you can use an internal station, or you can use what we call an anchor partner agreement. There's pros and cons. I'm not going to go through all of them, but on a public station, the key is, I think Cummins had a slide, there's 600, 700 of them in the country, but are those anywhere near where you operate? What type of out-of-route miles do you incur going there? If you're saving 30% on your fuel, but you're driving 40% incremental miles, you're probably going to lose. So are the public stations where you need them? From an internal station, again, you do have operating costs associated with that, upfront capital cost, and again, do you have the property to do so? So are you landlocked? Can you go ahead and build a station as well? Overall, the way we looked at it is to go with an anchor partner agreement. Again, part of the reason for that is we have the volume to do so. So what we did in the industry is last year we sent out a national RFP, and what we said, we're going to commit our volume for 5 to 7 years. So again, this was the breakdown, the chicken and egg. We said we'll go and commit our volume 5 to 7 years, build us the station, kind of like Field of Dreams. Build it, they will come. Again, right now, fuel providers don't want to build stations. So I know, David, you asked a question earlier, where are they building? They're building where the fleets are buying trucks. They don't know where fleets are buying trucks, so we said, okay, we're going to tell you where we're going to buy. We're going to tell you where we need the stations. Come build it. And again, we decided to go with 100% public stations. So these anchor tenant stations, we awarded 7 of them in 2013. They are all public stations. We're using our volume to bring the station in. However, we wanted to make sure that we could expand the industry and not just benefit Frito. Again, because if we can expand it, all those costs associated with it go down for everybody that's involved, because then you start to get the economies of scale. You get more fleets in your neighborhood that you can, that are using those stations. We weren't sure when we sent this out last year how it was going to impact the industry. We received over 69 bids from 17 different companies. We awarded 7 locations. Additionally, we did send one out for this year for sites that we're going to build in 2014. Haven't announced the awards yet, so I can't say too much, but I am pleased to probably say that there's probably a very, very high probability that there'll be a brand new station here middle of next year in Canton, Ohio, that will be a public station and state-of-the-art. But again, the awards haven't been mentioned yet, so look, probably November 1st-ish, we'll start to award those. So very simple here, again, how to manage the change. It's kind of the old real estate saying, location, location, location. Here, I would say communication, communication, communication. Again, we engaged our drivers. We took our drivers to pilots. We engaged our drivers with reviews with our OEs, whether it was Cummins reviews or our suppliers, Volvo and/or Freightliner in some cases. In national operations meetings, we dedicated technicians to the program itself. We do have a dedicated technical expert that helps us with the OEs and also our technicians. But again, invite people to challenge it, because that's where you start to get the learnings and you realize what questions you do need to answer. Example of how we communicated, we developed some poster boards very similar to a lot of the conversations you heard today, but we wanted to make sure that all the technicians, employees understood, and drivers understood what our corporate mission it was, what kind of the burning platform of the change was. And then additionally, the biggest piece is you'll see the picture of the vehicles over there with safety and capability. Really what we wanted to educate our folks on is these are production vehicles. This vehicle that you see there, you saw outside, that's not a new vehicle. The fuel system on it is new, but those are OE production vehicles. Yesterday I was in Orlando talking to our transportation team that's rolling out, and they kept talking to me about, what if there's an accident? What if we have an issue? And I said, well, you can go to Ford today and buy a F-150 to a F-650 with gaseous prep on it and drive a natural gas compressed vehicle. That technology, they're not going to roll out if it's not unsafe. It's that same safety that goes into these vehicles. Once our employees understand that, then they accept it, and they're willing to, get in the vehicles and drive them overall. Again, we just create a quick checklist. We have a site list, so everybody knows exactly what needs to happen at what time frame as we start to roll the vehicles out, whether it's operations, fueling, and who's going to do that. Again, no different than any project that you run within your team. Additionally, we purchased some demo tractors, and we sent the demos in ahead of rollouts to make sure folks could touch, feel, understand the vehicle. In some cases, they did test runs before we launched it. There are a couple different options. If you can't go buy one, you can always lease one, rent them. A lot of the OEs are willing to, go ahead and give you a vehicle for, 2-3 months or weeks or whatever, so you can kind of get that in your operation. The other thing that it did for us is before we placed all our bets on natural gas, we wanted to make sure we could utilize these vehicles. We purchased these 2 vehicles, ran them for about 6 months in our fleet, and were able to haul our product. So then we said, okay, this works for us. It's not Cummins selling us a product, or Freightliner or Volvo. This absolutely works internally for our fleet. So again, I'd ask you, if you're looking for it, get a demo, understand how it works in your fleet yourself. Additionally, we had really a three-prong approach in training our technicians and our drivers. We'd hand out material, we had educational videos, and also our OEs did a lot of hands-on training. And when I talk OEs, it was either fuel station providers, engine providers, and or chassis providers. They all came and did training for us, which went over well. It's better than me going to talk to our employees. They're hearing it directly from the experts, getting all their questions answered. We did develop 2 videos. One's about 6 minutes, the other one's about 7 minutes, so it does hold their attention, and it shows them how to fuel. And then we also have one that kind of shows the safety and operation of the truck as well. So you may ask, okay, has it worked? To date, by the end of this year, we'll have 208 Cummins-powered trucks on the road. That is about 20% of our entire fleet. In about a year and a half, almost 2 years, they'll be at 50% of our traffic locations across the country. We have about 27 plants, so we'll have them at about 14 to 16 different plants across the country overall. So is Frito-Lay at critical mass? I tell you, EVs close but not yet, and propane close but not yet. On CNG Class 8, I would definitely say yes, we are at critical mass. In the future, 90 to 95% of what we purchase will be natural gas. We tend to purchase probably 100, 125 tractors a year. Cummins, you didn't hear that, but that is what our goal is for the next 3 to 5 years. We intend to purchase probably 90, 95% of natural gas vehicles. Additionally, when we were going into AOP this year, we had a lot of dialogue why we would ever buy another diesel tractor. And we really considered of never doing that again, at least until technology changes or something changes in the environment. But we noticed in a couple areas within our fleet, we're not ready yet, whether it was we didn't have the leadership or the change management ready. So again, we are purchasing a couple diesels to kind of supplement, and that's where the 10% will come in. The one thing I will let you know is, again, we're not necessarily in the pilot phase. We're not into the test phase. We have over 6 million miles on 83 trucks that are currently running. As I mentioned, by the end of the year, we'll have 200 trucks on the road, and we'll save over 3 million gallons of diesel annually. And again, the better benefit as well is about 3,000 tons of emissions annually. So again, we typically keep our trucks about 7 years. So if you start to do that math over the course of those years, that's about 21 million gallons of diesel over the course of that those vehicles' life. And that's on 200 trucks. I told you earlier on, we have about 1,100. So as you start to multiply that, those numbers just get a little bit larger. With that, any questions?
Well, I'll start with one, Michael. Can you remind us about the size of the Frito-Lay operation in Canton, and then specifically the size of the fleet that operates out of here or to and from here, and how much of that is CNG?
Here in Canton, we operate approximately about 48 tractors, Class 8 tractors at our plant. Currently, we do have 10 CNG vehicles. I'm heading to Volvo tonight to see where my other vehicles are. We have 4 to 6 more coming this year, and we're looking at probably 10 to 12 more next year. So we'll probably be at 50% by this time next year in Canton. And again, I mentioned we'll probably make a pretty big investment in a fuel station this time next year as well. We also, in the state of Ohio, we run about 400 vehicles overall. So a lot of those vehicles are small to medium duty vehicles that we're looking at either propane and or EV. We're pretty excited about the Cummins 6.7. It does have a little more horsepower than we truly need, but again, we think that may play into the medium duty vehicles that we have, about 3,000 nationally, so and about 200 of those here in Ohio.
Yes, please.
Why did you go CNG rather than propane?
In the Class 8, there is no really propane alternative. There are some retrofits out there, but we stay away from retrofits. We rather OE solution on the Class 8. Now, if you look at medium duty, as I mentioned, we did convert some gasoline vehicles over to propane, and is working very, very well for us. Here in Ohio, we have 45 propane vehicles. They're medium duty. They're 40 350s that run out of Cleveland, Cincinnati, and Columbus. Excuse me, sorry. So.
I'm really interested in the anchor station program. You talk about awarding a station. What you're really doing is awarding that fuel purchase promise, or are you making capital investment in them as well as the partner?
No, we don't own the stations at all. So the 7 that our commitment is really our gallons. So the way and not to get into the contracts too much, I can't. But the way it is, we have a 5-year commitment to purchase gallons. And if we don't use those gallons, we're going to purchase them anyway. And typically what that does is that covers the capital investment for the supplier. So they're more willing to go build a station, because right now a station, I don't know if there's anybody in here that builds the stations, but they're probably 1.5 on the very, very low side to $2.2 million to go build. So that's why a lot of folks aren't going to go spend $2 million to build a station and hope 2 or 3 trucks show up. So what we say is, hey, go spend your $2 million. We'll cover your capital costs, and in some cases, with our volume, we'll go over that, and then other folks are able to take advantage of that station.
In some ways, you might say that you're using the private sector to perform a public service by insisting that they be public stations and therefore giving others the opportunity to use them. Are you seeing other fleets, other companies take advantage of that opportunity because you pioneered it? Are you seeing the encouragement of other CNG fleets because of what you've done specifically?
There is some of that, absolutely. When we sent our RFP out, I did have quite a few fleets that I won't name call us and say, hey, can we utilize your station, or where are those stations going to be, and or can we help you decide where they are? Because when we sent out our first one last year, we had about 12 different locations, and some folks said, hey, if it was here, it would really be beneficial. So we partnered with them, and the way we partnered with them is that we turned them on to our station provider so they could do their own contract at those sites. But there are definitely folks that are doing that.
What is the longest run in mileage that your tractors will make on CNG?
We put fuel on our vehicles that we can go anywhere from 400 to 800 miles. So when folks talk long range, and again, you're not going to go 400 miles today or 800 miles tomorrow. So I don't want to get folks confused of, hey, am I going to go 400 or 800? Depending on how many tanks we put on the vehicle, and we can design it to what we want. As Cummins had mentioned earlier, the upcharge in the vehicle is really all in the tanks. So we didn't want to put 800-mile capacity on every single vehicle, because nationally our average is about 450 miles, but we do have a lot of lanes that run 600-700. But when you start to look at it, you can get 800 on the vehicle. I know one of our fuel suppliers is here today. They are working very diligently on different tank packages that you could potentially get up to 200 gallons, which you're going to get to about the 1,000-mile range. Ultimately, also working on some aero. It was just announced today. They're coming behind the cab. If you look at the truck out there, you're driving a brick wall. They have a tank package now that is much more aerodynamic, which increases the MPG, so you can start to get further overall. So range isn't necessarily an issue. Folks like to talk it, but I think 800 miles, you can go really almost wherever you want.
Another question from the guests? Well, I have one more question, Michael. Okay. I'm really interested in this corporate culture you talk about of sustainability and green operation, and how long has that been an important part of Frito-Lay PepsiCo, who were the leaders that began that in your company?
I don't know exactly the leaders. One of the individuals, Dave Haff, who retired last year, he actually, kind of came from this area. He ran a plant in Michigan. I know we're in Ohio, but it's close. But really, from an overall sustainability standpoint, it really started in probably '99, kind of as you saw the baselines there, and we, kind of evolved from overall.
Okay. Join me in thanking Michael Birk and Frito-Lay.